Welcome to Culmination. Well, we're not experts, but we sure have a lot to say. In the process of becoming our best self, I have with me the computer science student Rohan Mathur to discuss first impressions. And with that said, let's get started. So, Rohan, what are first impressions exactly?
Um, I guess this definition is kind of circular, but the
Mhm.
first time that you really give like another person a defining piece of your like personality, viewpoint, whatever.
Mm.
So I guess in my opinion, just saying hi to someone isn't really a first impression unless it's, I don't know, a very spectacular hi. But like once they like if it's enough for them to form an opinion about you, that is a first impression, in my
Okay.
opinion.
And do you have like an example of such?
Um, well, I just came back from college, and when basically you'd be introduced to someone else's friends when you're meeting someone else, um, there's like sometimes you'll see me would just pass by, say hi to them. That I don't feel is a real impression because everyone's gonna say hi unless I don't know you're preoccupied or very close to yourself. But I
Mm.
guess like when I'd meet a new group of friends and then we'd start talking maybe about something recent that happened. And then when I feel like I can't think of an exact example, but when I said enough that I had, I guess, a defining trait in their mind.
Okay. So, just some general perception of them, right?
Yeah, general perception.
Okay. And that would make sense just because it's like you're sitting down with them or whatever you're doing, and it's like it's almost like subconscious the way you analyze them or the
Yeah,
situation. It's like, what is their tone like? How comfortable are they? Uh, I don't know. How
exactly.
do
Like,
they act towards you? What are they talking about specifically?
yeah, what interests them? What are they like? Are they quick to comment? Are they slow? Do they like maybe like even something small, like how much time do they take before they speak? Is something
Hmm.
that I feel like we're all subconsciously thinking about. Well, that sounds kind of contradictory. It's all things that go into our internal analysis of someone.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said the example that something as simple as like saying hi to somebody might not be exactly a first impression. Because in a setting like college, for an example, where you're in this new space of all these new people that you've never seen before, like everybody's gonna have this like generic, like, I don't know, nice persona that they're wearing, of
Yeah.
just like, oh, hey, bro.
Yeah, like I'm a very extroverted person, so I probably say hi and wave to basically everyone who like even gets close to making eye contact with me. So
Mhm.
I feel like that's definitely not enough to form a real impression of someone. But I mean, not that this is necessarily on topic, but I still feel like that's nice.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely nice, and there is a kind of person who would do that more often, and somebody who wouldn't per se.
Yeah.
Like if you're saying hi to everybody, it's like somebody can look at you and say like, "Oh, well, he probably is extroverted because he's over here talking to all
Yeah,
these
no,
people."
better stay away from that guy. Probably a disease.
Yeah, basically. Um, so that begs the question, how can we present ourselves in a way to make a good first impression?
So I think a good first impression is also per person, right? Like I think
Mm,
the only thing that really defines whether a first impression is good or not, is whether it's honest.
okay.
So,
Would you
I
mind
mean,
elaborating?
yeah, sure. I think, I guess maybe when I was younger, I felt pressure. I felt like an internal pressure that my first impression, I have to appear in a certain way, like whether that was smart or put together. And I
Mhm.
feel like now, looking back, I don't think that was the most constructive thing because while it may like, oh, this person's opinion might be like high of you initially.
Yeah.
First of all, like an opinion is by by nature subjective, and
Yes.
it's not like we have a register of who's good and who's bad. And I feel like the most important thing within a first impression, if you want to ever engage in communication with them again, that it should be a more or less honest glimpse into who you are.
I agree with that, yeah. Because it's like, why sell? Why be like a salesman who's advertising this acting
Exactly.
role of you who isn't even
It's
real, you know?
it's like we're not products as much as, like, it may feel like it sometimes. We're not like we when you're selling yourself, you're selling what you are, I guess. You're not trying to trick anyone into liking you because the chances are you're likable because I feel like the average person is likable. So,
Nobody wants to be spam, bro.
yeah, exactly.
It's like I'm trying to sell you this product that doesn't even exist, man.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's like if you're in any given situation, here's two examples. One is like the workplace where you're trying to land a job, and one is just like meeting a new friend, for an example. Like your roommate introduces you to somebody. It's like
I mean, yeah, sorry, go
you,
on.
yeah, I'll just finish this real quick. You just want to present yourself, at least in a job showcase. It's like you don't want to show your flaws per se, but you want to be honest and genuine of like, okay, here are my strengths, here is what I am. So in that sense, you would kind of be cherry picking a little bit, but it's still you. And then in
Yeah.
the other example, you might as well just be your true self.
Yeah, so when you bring up like job interviews, first of all, I'm sure you know it's like very common that like an interview person will ask about your flaws. And that's why I think
Hmm.
it's because they're trying to get as much of an accurate first impression as possible. Because I mean, if you're working for someone, your entire persona, your entire like being is relevant. So I
Yes.
think, and I found myself like thinking about this in college apps, like especially when I'd read Friends, and I'd be like, and like if I were to, I'd feel super weird talking about like my accomplishments without like talking about like I know like now they tell you to do this, but I felt like in like resumes when you're writing about like what you did properly,
Yeah.
I've it always it's kind of stressed me out because I'm like, what if like if someone gets this image based off of the resume of my me at my optimal, is that necessarily honest? And if I get hired on it, I'm being hired off of a false persona. And I guess the way I sort of cope with that is realizing everyone's gonna do that, so everyone's gonna assume you have everyone's gonna assume that things came with hardship.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point because it's like it doesn't exactly show like all you see on this resume is accomplishments and the results. But it's like never
Yeah.
do you see the climb.
Exactly. Like, I'm not putting, like, the robotics competition I got, like, 3rd to last in because that would be a waste of space and kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But like that's what it took to
Yeah,
get
exactly.
to
Like,
the
it's
other
something
things,
that
you know.
happened.
Right. And sometimes weaknesses weaknesses are interesting just the way you can kind of handle them in any given situation. It's like if you hold them high to a point where it crushes you or annoys people because it's like, oh, they're just kind of like self-deprecating and that's like, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
That's bad, but if you just acknowledge your weaknesses or just try to placate to your strengths, or even try
Yeah.
to work on your weaknesses. Like, I think that's very humble, very honest, very genuine.
That's actually something I like to do, especially, like, when I'm starting to get close with someone, like, if I see something that I'm like, "Oh, I wish I didn't do that," or, "I wish I didn't say that," like, I like to mention it, not just for the other person so they know that I'm not, like, I don't know, a douchebag, but so, like, I feel like saying it out loud, saying, "Oh, I wish I didn't say that," or, "Oh, that was a weird thing to say, my bad." It
Mm,
feels like I'm confronting myself about it, and even in a first impression, I feel like being secure with the idea that everyone needs to grow,
yeah.
like, being secure with the idea you need to grow can give a good image, but that's also a personal thing.
Well, yeah, it's like you, not everyone's perfect. And a first impression it's just super quick. It's like 5 seconds. That's how short it takes to get a perception of somebody.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. It's just you always want to be. honest in that sense, and really everybody's doing the same thing. It's not like you're this odd man out, the black sheep,
Exactly.
who's like, "Oh god, I gotta nail this first impression or else they won't like me."
Yeah,
You
I'm
know?
also a pretty impulsive person when it comes to basically everything. So I used to find myself backtracking like, "Oh no, I just made a horrible first impression by saying that super weird thing to say.
Or like
I'm never gonna
dwelling.
recover." What? Yeah, I
Like
dwell on
dwelling.
it.
Yeah.
But now I guess if I'm making a first impression and they say something or like, "Wait, that was a weird thing to say," I'll just be like, "Oh, that was a weird thing to say." But that's okay because, I mean, obviously I don't say that's okay because nobody's perfect, but actually, I don't know, maybe I should say that. Or but it's just I feel more comfortable with myself then.
Mhm, kinda like a mental check and also, like, a way to tell the person you're with that, "Look, this is a raw statement that I made. It is not defined, not ironed out. It is not
Yeah,
a
yeah.
true opinion," or whatever. Like, maybe I meant some semblance of it, but, like, not take it with a grain of salt. That's the word.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Also, of course,
Um,
that might not be for everyone. It's just something I do.
yeah. So I wanna ask you now, let's say the scenario goes wrong where you just completely fumble the entire first impression. Like, you made a fool of yourself, or maybe you appeared to be like an asshole or something. How can
Yeah.
you turn a bad impression around?
Well, I guess this is sort of segueing from the last thing, but
Mhm.
when I just absolutely foobar communication, the first thing I do is I just acknowledge it, like, vocally, so everyone's on the same page. Like, "That was a bad move. Let's try again," or something like that. It just seems like because the alternative is just in your mind speculating on how they think of you, speculating on how you think they think of you, and then suddenly you're just in so many layers of, "Oh my goodness, they hate me," and I
Yes.
don't think, A, you're not gonna be able to speak more constructively then,
Yes.
and it's just gonna be unfun. So I feel like it's a little bit humbling. It's a little you're kinda putting yourself out there, sort of raw. But for me, it's like I feel like it's a nice, like, hard reset.
Mhm. A factory reset.
Yeah, factory reset, if you will.
Right. Yeah, that is
And also,
it's
like,
like
I'm
a
saying that that's something I've done in the past. I think I can think of 2 times when I definitely was like, "Hold on, let's just forget everything I just said and try again."
my god. That's pretty good though.
Yeah. And I'm
Um,
still friends with both of those people, so I'd say I have a N equals to 100% track record.
so why how did that happen? How did you manage to keep them around? Like, couldn't they have
Um,
been turned off by that?
well, I'm sure they could have. So again, N equals 2. There are 2 examples of this, so it may not work every time. But,
Mhm.
like, I guess for a little bit of context, um, like, I saw somebody was well, I was near my friend's dorm. And then I didn't live in a dorm, I lived in an apartment, so, basically, like, in the dorms, everybody kinda had their, like, social structures built up, but I had, like, my roommates and a couple other friends, so I was, like that's how, like, we'd meet people by being, like, just outside the dorms and seeing who everybody knew, and then somebody came out who one of my friends recognized, and I was eating a salad, and I have no idea why I said this. There was no logical reason that I said this, but it was like, "Hey, do you want some of my salad? You can use my fork if you want."
Oh, no.
I was like and then for a second so he looked at me for a sec, and that's when it hit me, like, that was, like, probably, like, a local minimum for in terms of quality of things I could have said.
Right, it's
It's
just
just
like
like, "Never mind, forget I said that. Do you want, like, something that's packaged?"
yeah, yeah. It's just funny because you're trying to be nice, but it's like, maybe
Yeah,
that's a bit
yeah.
too nice, I don't know.
It's just weird.
You're like blood brothers sharing the same fork.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess really maybe the whole secret to that turnaround is just honesty.
Yeah, that's what I like to do as an expert in absolutely trash compacting my conversations.
And recycling.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that would be. What does that mean to recycle your
When you say the same joke to someone every time. Example is I ask everyone I first meet what their favorite kind of countertop is.
why?
I don't know, because first of all, like it makes me be like, wait, why would you like what? And then the best part is then they actually think like, what is my favorite kind of countertop? And they realize they've only really thought of the countertop that came with whatever place they live in.
Huh. Well, I gotta say, you got me thinking. I'm
Yeah,
like,
see,
what,
it works.
limestone, granite?
Yeah, well, most people say granite, but I did get a bamboo once.
Bamboo.
Yeah.
Huh.
Apparently, it's like water resistant, so that might be just in case you're going countertop shopping.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind next time I'm out there. Um, so let me ask this now, kind of moving forward. So we talked about first impressions, and we talked about the recovery if it was bad. And really, we kind of just figured out the whole secret, at least applicable to us, but I feel like this could be universal too. Just this idea of honesty, like being your genuine self and not selling some imposter.
Unless you're
Um,
just a total asshole, which in that
well,
case,
unless you're just a total asshole, yeah. Um, so why do first impressions matter, though?
well, at least for me, it's as simple as just when you meet someone after your first conversation, the only information you have about them, unless your friends were talking shit about them behind their back for years, is just that conversation. So every single bit of opinion you have on someone is off of that impression. So when you know someone forever, you can say something super stupid and it's like it's so drowned in all the other things you've all the other conversations you've had, all the other things you've done that
Yeah.
like it can be less relevant. But when you've only spoken to someone once, that's gonna be the only thing that they have to judge you off.
Right. I mean, you only have that limited data, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I you said like n equals 2, right? Was that like a statistics reference?
Oh, I'm sorry. I it's something I say sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no,
just
it was funny
two
because
data
I
points.
caught that, but I was like, you really
Yeah,
just
I'm
said
sorry.
that.
There's no reason a normal person should be expected to understand that.
Well, I mean, all it just means is two
Yeah, two
samples
data
that you have.
points. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was funny, so I'll give you that.
Thank you very much.
Um, so yeah, when you have limited data, I guess that is why it could be important, just because it's like this is your whole perception of this person, especially if they're like recurring, you know?
Yeah, so if you're gonna talk to them again, like
Yeah.
it's kind of funny, but like my roommate, the first day of he was taking like a cognitive science class, and it was like on a Zoom lecture because of COVID and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, the first day of class, he's like the only person in class with his camera on.
Mhm.
I was eating breakfast next to him, and he was brushing his teeth because he thought it'd be hilarious. And then he then minutes after the class ended, he got an email about Zoom etiquette and what to do and not to do.
Oh my God.
And I was thinking like, "Oh my goodness." So now all that professor knows about him as of day 1 is that he brushes his teeth in Zoom.
They sent him a thing about etiquette.
Not only him, but the entire class a thing on Zoom etiquette and what to do and what not to do.
So they were all probably thinking like, oh, this is because
Oh,
of
they
like,
all knew because he was like the only person in that class with his camera on.
well, was it funny?
Oh, it was hilarious. I thought it was funny, but I don't think the
Yeah.
professor thought it was funny.
Right. And that kind of leads you into thinking about the subjective nature that we talked about. Like, think about every single connection at play here. You have the connection between your friend and the professor, maybe a bad impression. Then you have
Yeah.
with a connection with you. as somebody who's not in the class, but like is witnessing this, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Or I guess that's not really a first impression because you already know him, but I don't know, it's something. It's still a
It was an
connection at
impression. I
play.
mean, we also to be completely honest, we kind of talked about it. Like, I was like, he was like, "I have to brush my teeth. Should I do it before or after?" I was like, "Wouldn't it be hilarious if you did it during?" And I was saying it as a joke, but he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do that. That sounds funny." So
Um, you
yeah,
provoked this.
yeah, it's okay. I think he got an A in the class. It's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Um, well, and then there's a connection between each individual cameraless individual in the class.
Not much of
So
an impression, which is interesting.
yeah, like it doesn't tell you anything, but it's like maybe some of them see him as, oh, he's obnoxious, or oh, wow, that was really funny,
Yeah.
or I know that guy. What's wrong with him? Or I've seen him around. Is this what he's like?
Yeah. I mean, we tend to do a lot of dumb things in public for that reason, just to like, I don't know, just to make people a little squirmy. It's fun
Keep
for
them on
me.
their toes a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll ask you this now, kind of moving forward. If you can recall from all of your experiences just, you know, through college this year and high school and even before, what was the best first impression? Like one that you literally left the scene and was like, huh, yeah, you know,
Is it an impression somebody made on me or an impression I made?
you made on, or like you felt like you made a great impression.
Like, he's a really
And
good
you can
impression.
also tell one that somebody left on you.
Okay, well, I just got super lucky that my, computer science professor is just a really weird guy because, like, so he at the end of the semester, he had these in-person sessions now, like, when, like, everybody was vaccinated and stuff,
Uh-huh.
and, um, so he had these it was, like, 12 people, and he came in, and then we were talking, and he was, like, asking us all the kinda stuff, so I was just, like, recounting weird things that I'd done. He was talking about the weird things he had done. I was like, I feel like my sense of humor, like my immediate sense of humor, and then even like the further it went, it seemed like it really like connected with him. So I don't even think that I did a specifically good job. I think I just got really lucky that like I vibed so well with this guy, because then I left, and then the next day, my friends were in an in-person session, I came, and then he, like, remembered me and, like, talked to me a bit. So I just felt like, man, I just totally nailed that.
Yeah. Do you that brings up a good point. Do you think it's kind of luck based?
Well, some of it is luck-based, right? Like, every time you're gonna make a first impression, if you're gonna, like, to some extent, I mean, you can limit to how much of an extent it is, but it is a little bit of a risk, right? Because if we've already decided that, like, the best case is you're gonna be honest, it's just possible that your personalities won't mix at all.
Right.
And which also leads to the question, how important, like, every time you're talking to someone, like, you also have to think, like, how important is it that they wanna, like, continue communicating with you, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think it would be pretty cool if my computer science professor wanted to communicate with me because I don't know, I'm studying computer science and he seems like a cool guy. So that it was like sort of higher stakes, but it worked out. So then like in a lower stakes instance, if you want to be less risky, you could like while still being honest, maybe be like a little bit like you can share as much as you want a first impression, right? It's not being dishonest to not share everything about you,
Yeah.
right? Like the concept of TMI exists, and I guess that's for everybody to decide where their comfort level is.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting just how the relationships we have with people also kind of play a role with this because think about the different we kind of touched upon this, but just think about the different types of relationships we have with people in the sense of what about a work colleague or your roommate or your best friend or your friend that only tags along in the group, but you don't really hang out with them one-on-one, or like, or your
Yeah,
professor,
yeah,
somebody of
I see what you mean.
authority.
Yeah.
Um, and then it makes you think, like, even though you want to be honest during the first impression, because these relationships are so nuanced and different, and they mean something different to you,
Yeah.
you're kind of reflecting a different side of you because of it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you always choose what to reflect, and as long as you're not being malicious about it, like trying to hide you're trying to hide something that's impactful, that like
Yeah.
you can you can have just as successful an impression saying half the things if what you're saying is honest and meaningful.
Mhm.
Or you can just, full extent talk about every member of your family and your dog, and then it still means something to them. And
Yeah.
it can depend on the person and the circumstance and whether they want to hear it or not. But I think those are like both. It isn't necessarily like one. There's a right way to do it,
Yeah.
which seems obvious now that I'm saying it. But yeah.
But it's also like with your work colleagues, maybe you are a lot more like you have a lot more of a work ethic than when you're around, I don't know, your friend when you're just like studying, you know?
I mean,
Just
I'm
be-
not sure I agree with that, right? Because like if you're going to be talking with a work colleague and you're going to be establishing, like if you're first making a first impression on a colleague and you're trying to establish like who you are, I feel like acting as if you have maybe a stronger work ethic than you do, or maybe putting that more forward than you normally would,
Mhm.
could have negative repercussions, right? Like if you say like if you somehow give off the impression that you're some sort of like work machine, you can work all the time, then maybe the expectations would be like unfitting.
Right. I'm really glad you said that just because what I said was different from my intention of what I meant. I guess
Oh,
it
I'm sorry
what
if I
I
misinterpreted.
you it's like you misinterpreted it because what I said was exactly what would lead to your response, if that makes sense. Like, I just didn't word it. You didn't misinterpret it. I just said it not as
All right, first
precise.
impression ruined. Let's pack it up.
Yes, my first impression is ruined. Let's factory reset this.
Yeah.
So, let's get the run back, guys.
Yeah.
Um, what I specifically meant was it's not like you're faking this work ethic that just comes out of nowhere, but maybe you're more likely. I need to use these, like, less absolute words
Oh,
that would
yeah.
help. Like,
Yeah.
you're more likely to, probably because you're already working, but just to exhibit more of a trait, for example, work ethic, as it's not like that's definite.
I see. So, like, when you're sharing things, you're not gonna share stuff about how you, I don't know, stripped on the top of a McDonald's and jumped into the parking lot. You're gonna talk about the time that you
Oddly specific.
completed an assignment. Don't look into it.
Well, kind of just like what you exhibit
Yeah, yeah.
versus picking and choosing. It's just like it
I guess it's like
again,
analogous to wearing a suit versus wearing, you know, swim trunks and a sombrero.
what does that mean?
I mean, like you can dress like when you go to work, like you'll probably wear like normal
Yeah.
people clothes because you're showing like a professional aura, I guess. Or
Yeah.
you could, you know, throw that all in the trash and just look weird because you have a very
Right.
secure employment.
Yeah, it's like some of it is choice, definitely.
Yeah.
Whether you're reasonably thinking or not. And the rest of it's kind of just this subconscious. I just exhibit this. I don't really realize it. Like maybe I'm stuttering. Maybe I'm slow with my speech. Maybe I'm extremely confident. But it just is. That's how it is. in that
Yeah.
given moment. So it's not like you're
Yeah,
choosing
definitely.
that. You're just choosing what to say and specifically what you do action-wise.
Well, you can also choose your demeanor, right? Like, you can
Oh, yeah.
choose to sound more confident if you are able, I guess. You can choose to mutter, you can choose to slouch,
Mhm.
but there is a natural way of things which
Right, and I'm
I try
glad
to
you
condition them into.
cleaned up what I said too, like, you can still think about this stuff, but there's also stuff at work that's not really.
Yeah, yeah, stuff you can't control.
Mhm. You wanna talk about that McDonald's thing, bro?
No, I totally made that. Although I did climb on top of a statue post at, like, 9:45, and I just started dancing and it was, like, near a traffic light, so people would stop and look, and then the traffic light would turn green, and then sometimes they'd still be looking because I guess I'm just that entertaining.
Huh.
But
And do you think that's leaving a good impression?
well, I think that's n I think those people are never gonna speak to me again, so the impression I leave is so meaningless that I'll do anything within the extent of my dignity and the law, and one of those constraints is a little bit tighter.
Mm. Yeah, and that of itself has value behind what you said. Just this idea of you'll even act differently depending on how this like the longevity
Yeah,
whoa,
yeah.
the longevity
I think
of
you said it right.
the relation.
Or maybe my brain just put that together.
Yeah, you probably just heard what I was going to say, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I'm last day of high school, I don't care about these people anymore. I'm gonna moon them or something, you know?
Oh, Jesus Christ, don't
No,
moon
no, no, no.
people at the day
I'm
of high
not doing
school.
that. I just mean like it just the philosophy of like maybe I'll do something stupid or maybe I'll stick it to
Yeah.
this person
Yeah,
if
I see what you mean. Like, we here at Rohan Mathur Inc. do not condone mooning people in high school or
yes.
any other age, unless it's really funny. If it's really funny, go ahead.
Mhm. Well, I mean, since this is a show about self-improvement, really please don't do that. But I'm just kind of
Hey,
giving
self-improvement is about the self. So if you think you're gonna be better after mooning someone, who am I to tell you not to?
I
Basically,
guess
is what
that
you have
maybe
to
you
tell.
really were wronged by somebody and this is your center
Yeah.
part. I still don't
Basically,
recommend it. I'm just joking around here, but
yeah.
please don't take this literally, guys. Don't quote me on this. Um, but it's like if you don't feel like something's gonna last, then I think this is why I'm talking about this. Not of you should go moon people, but more of like you you have to acknowledge that you're going to think differently when this relationship, this connection is over, basically.
Oh,
Like
yeah, totally.
you have to acknowledge that there's a difference because maybe you do get the idea of mooning them or like this dude that you absolutely hate. Maybe you just want to go up to them and like cuss them out or something. But when you get that thought, you just have to be like, well, you know what? Like you just have to calm down a bit. You have to be collected, just think about the consequences and everything and say, yes, I do feel that this situation could lead me to do something like this,
Yeah.
but you just have to make the right call.
Yeah. And I guess that's maybe could lead to a last impression if you play your cards that poorly. But
Right, yeah. You know
yeah,
what? I like
what?
that. Wait, I want to touch upon that. Just because, this is yeah, this is the Sunday episode that I'm doing it. We're recording it early, but it'll be on the day of my graduation. So I
Oh,
guess
yo, congratulations, Casey. Way to graduate. Woo.
thank you, sir.
You can't see,
Uh,
but I'm doing a little dance
you're doing a
in
little
honor of
dance.
you. Yeah.
Um, Last impressions. I get this is completely different than the entire topic of the video, but I guess maybe not in the same sense. What about a last impression? Like the last time you see somebody.
Well, I
What do
think
you
it has
think
a lot of
really counts?
similarities. Oh, sorry.
No, that was it.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of similarities in that you choose, like, you can choose the opinion you want to leave. Just now, there's a lot more baggage. So you could either work to reinforce, like, if you think about it as, I hate to get computer sciencey on you, but if you think about someone's image as you as a model that you're training, every time you do something, you're training that model of you in their mind. Wait, is this
Mhm.
terminology making any sense?
Yeah, like, just
Yeah.
you gotta keep that perception going in a
Yeah,
correct
so
way.
you have a model of every single person you know in your mind, and every single time you communicate with them, you're training that model a little bit. You're making it a little bit more accurate. You're reinforcing
Mhm,
certain parts, adding more data to it, right?
mhm.
So your last impression, you have the chance to finalize that model and ship it out to like the production environment for when they're going to talk about you in the bathroom. But so you have
Your
the
big
choice
break.
to either like just totally throw a wrench into the data set and make it and like change everything. You have a choice to reinforce specific things you want them to think of you, or you have a choice to not care and just do whatever you want, let the model do what it does,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
So it has a lot to do with intent, and it also has a lot to do with what like the effort you're willing to put in and how much you care about that person's perception of you, that person's model, if you will.
yeah. And I feel like a lot of people in their last impressions, it's like it's this idea of closure or just ending it off right.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a first impression is all about, you're just meeting them, so you wanna set it
You wanna
off
set that
right.
model off right, yeah. You wanna give them a
Yeah, but
couple
then
data.
the last is interesting because it's not as important, I don't think, but I
Yeah.
think it's more of like a personal satisfaction in the end.
Oh, yeah, do you want an example?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
So, so for AP US History with Mrs. Nimsker and in Sycamore High School at,
You wanna
what
give
is
us
it,
our location
7400
too?
Cornell Road. Yeah. I didn't mean to dox our school there, but anyways. Like, in the last we had, like, a end of the
So,
semester form that we were supposed to fill out and say, like, any last things. And I was like, "This is the last thing, it's not for a grade, in fact, I'm getting extra credit no matter what I say." So I just went ahead
mhm,
and put on, like, I did notes, like, 2 of the like, 2 days of like, all the times we're supposed to do it, and all the other times, I just, like, absorbed everything from lecture. I was thinking, this is the like, for all practical purposes, the last necessary impression. So I'm just gonna go out right and say, like, I didn't really take notes in your class on the textbook, I just took it on your lectures. And I said why. I explained, like, "Well, I just found your lectures way more informative, way easier for me to learn,
yes.
and like, the note quizzes weren't that detrimental to my grade, so I figured I can do fine on the test, just not." And I did this knowing full well that her philosophy was very, like, textbook note centric, but I
Yeah.
figured, like, it didn't really hurt me, right? I felt a little bit of, like, it was the end of the year, so I had a little bit of, I don't know, maybe unearned swagger upon me. And I felt like I didn't have much to lose, so I just said that. And I was thinking, and then she sent me an email soon, like, and said, like, I should, like, she said she wanted to talk to me. It's lunch or after school sometime because she was really interested in what I had to say. So I was like terrified. I was like, oh my god, she's gonna, I don't know, whip me for not taking notes in her class. But like, she actually asked, like, because I did well in the class, so she was like, I want to know about how you learn because it seems interesting and I want to learn. So I realized that, like,
Yeah.
maybe, like, I hate to get all cheesy, but just being straight up honest with a person that I knew is reasonable, Mrs. Nimskern being someone who I know is reasonable, like, that last impression being, like, completely honest went better than I ever could have hoped.
And you felt like leaving that last impression.
Yeah, it gave me closure. Like you said
Yeah.
earlier, it's a thing of closure. It's a thing of comfort. Finally setting in that model.
Yeah, like, you could have been fine without it,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
but you wanted to go through with it, just a last
Yeah.
hurrah?
Yeah, I got a little bit of glee from, like, I guess, strengthening that image of me in her mind.
Mhm. Well, also, it's something like that, she probably never considered that viewpoint because
Well, she might
probably
have considered
nobody
it, to be
was
completely honest.
had the courage to stand up and tell her that?
Well, I don't know about that. I'm probably not the first person to sorry, that there's a little bit of background noise. I'm probably
Yeah.
not the first person to have maybe skirted the responsibilities of that class and still done well. But I don't know, maybe.
Not many,
Maybe.
like N equals 2, right?
Yeah. N equals 2. But yeah.
So it was do you wanna
It
define that satisfaction exactly? Like, I feel like we all
yeah, I
know,
guess
but I'd like to hear
well,
it, like,
so if I
in
were
that
to define it, it's
that form.
there's like as at least for me as a social person, as a
Mhm,
socially paranoid person, I guess. I like knowing how people think of me. I like
mhm.
knowing that because it makes me feel more secure, I guess, in like a general social setting.
Yeah.
So by refining that, is it okay if I keep using this analogy? It started to grow on me, the
Yeah, it's
model one.
good.
So like by refining that like one last bit, I feel like in general, this is another person with a more accurate viewpoint of me, and I know how they think of me. So if they're to talk about me or leave an impression on someone else about me, I know what they're gonna say. Whether it's really bad, really good, or just very mediocre, at least I know it. So it makes me feel more secure with
Right.
myself.
And as humans, we love the idea of being remembered or having a
Yeah,
legacy.
yeah, definitely.
But, like, remembered justice, like, the way you actually were, not just like a
Exactly, not a
faulty
caricature.
perception. Yeah. Um, and you think it all starts with the first impression?
Well, I mean, again, the first impression is I think the first impression is super important until you communicate with them more. And
Yeah,
then the first impression, like one of my best friends ever, my first impression with him as like a 5-year-old or maybe probably younger. I thought he was an astromech droid and he didn't talk to me. So that was probably kind of garbo first impression, but we're still really good friends now.
yeah.
So
Well, yeah, but it's the setup, because it is
yeah,
the
it's a
first
setup.
thing.
And granted, we were also like 4-year-old kids, so we weren't really deciding who we hung out with back then. I couldn't
Mhm.
drive.
Right. And yeah, just that the connection matters too. It's like, are you going to see this guy every day because they're in your
Yeah.
class or something?
Yeah, yeah.
And in that sense, like, you can end up hating each other and then eventually something clicks and you turn it
Yeah,
around.
that's true. So I guess on that note, it's probably important not to judge other people's first impressions as much as we may be tempted to.
Mhm.
Like we're tempted to define our model on this tiny data set, but tiny data isn't always the best data.
Right, it's like when for a I'll continue the stats analogy here. Just like a normal curve, which is just like a normal distribution, it can only happen when you have enough data sets because
Yeah. What's that, the central limit theorem?
yeah, it's like you need more samples. Like if you
Yeah.
to put it in perspective to somebody who can't visualize this, it's like you can't go to a mall and ask a random dude, "What's your favorite ice cream flavor?" And they say vanilla, and then you post on your blog saying, "Hey guys, did you know that vanilla ice cream's the most popular flavor in America?" Like, no, because you asked one person.
Yeah.
But if vanilla actually was in reality, then if you had a sample of like 100 people, it might make more sense because maybe you'll have like, I don't know, 58 out of 100 say vanilla ice cream, but then you have some like,
Well, to be fair,
chocolate.
100 people may not be the most representative of the 7 billion people on this godforsaken planet, but
Well, exactly, but it's more.
yeah, it's probably a little better than having 1.
And also to take this further, it's like the more people you meet in your life, you continue to grow the samples of people that you've interact with and that you know. Like you
Oh,
keep
yeah, so
building
you're
this.
continuing to yeah, you're defining what traits mean what, or what first like, how can this first impression mean something based off of how similar in first impressions led to my
Exactly,
opinion.
yeah.
Yeah.
I thought of this the other day when I was, like, meeting new people. It's like, if you think about them and let me just say a disclaimer, like, this isn't as, like, robotic as it sounds, like, it's just, like, a mental tool, I guess. If you think about people in an archetypal sense, not like the person themselves and their wholeness, but just like this is a tool to communicate well. It's like if with your experiences of dealing with people and meeting new people, you start to see common patterns amongst specific personalities that I'll deem archetypes. They're just like more extroverted people are in like one archetype for an example. So if you meet a new person and they're similar in their temperament and personality to other people you've met, if you think about how you've interacted with other people of a similar archetype without really knowing anything about them besides the first impression that coincides with this perception that you have of other people too, if you hone in on that idea of just like if I talk to Greg, who's an extrovert like this, then I'll talk to Sally
Right.
like this because that may be the best path because
I
it's the
see.
mental set.
Yeah. I guess that sounds I mean, you're right, that does sound kinda eerily formulaic, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like
And I'm sure it's
doesn't
something we're
mean
all
that
doing
people
subconsciously.
it doesn't mean that people are archetypes and that's all they are. They're just like
Yeah.
a number or whatever or a
Well, I would
statistic.
argue that everyone's just a number and nothing else, but go on. No, I'm totally kidding.
Well, in a non-nihilist standpoint, they're not. They're individual people. But
I was
again, like what we talked about, the first impression is all you have. You have no
yeah.
other knowledge. So this is
Yeah, so
all
it's
you have to work with.
yeah, so it's probably good to acknowledge that whenever you're thinking about someone, not be like, "Well, that person made a garbage first impression. They like vanilla ice cream. Better not hang out with them ever again." Obviously,
Right.
that's a stupid example, but, like,
Yeah.
I guess, like, we shouldn't take a bad first impression as the end all be all.
Right. And, if you think about, okay, well, this is how I talked with this person in the past, maybe I should apply it here. If you kind of do that, then you can hit it off with them and then you start to get to know them and then you don't really think about the first impression anymore because it's not the first impression. Now
Yeah.
you hit it off and now you learn who they are.
Yeah.
They could be a lot like Greg. They could be
I
their
hate
own
Greg.
people. I
Greg
don't
is
know.
a guy. God.
Huh?
I was just saying how much I hated Greg. Ugh,
What's
what a loser.
wrong with Greg, bruh?
Well, he had a bad first impression, so he decided to, just
You let it
buy my
overcome.
entire opinion off of that.
I see. And do you think that's necessarily wrong?
Well, I mean, it depends on what actions it leads to. Like, if like if you are like hiring someone for a job and they make a really garbage impression on the in their interview, it probably isn't a very cost effective strategy to like call them all back and be like, "Hey, you
Yeah.
screwed up that first impression, but do you want to try again?" Because you got you have to hire someone. Work has to get done. But then on
Right.
the other hand, if you're meeting like I don't know, a friend of a friend, like a close friend of a close friend, and they make a garbage first impression, it may be in your best interest to give them the benefit of the doubt. So I guess it just depends on how like likely is it that you'll communicate with them again, and how important is that communication to your current state.
Yeah. And I guess real quick before we end this off, do you want to kind of talk about the like the business setting or whatever, just work? Because we've talked a lot about like the interpersonal connections with friends and everything, but just to kind of cover this a bit more, like at
What
the
do you
workplace
mean?
being hired and everything.
Oh, as in like good impressions for work for like interviews?
Yeah, or like what you would
So
recommend or
okay, sure, yeah. So I have been interviewed. I consider myself a pretty alright interviewer,
Mhm.
but I guess this is probably more relevant for behavioral interviews than technical ones. Because for technical interviews, the impression is gonna be whether you know your shit or not.
Yeah.
For behavioral interviews, at least something that I try to do is I try to I try to smile and ask questions. This is also pretty general tips, but, like,
Mm.
if they wanna see how you behave, behave how you behave, right? So, if you're someone who asks a lot of questions, ask a lot of questions because that's the kind of person you are, and they're looking for they're not looking for a right and a wrong personality, they're looking for someone who fits with them. So,
Yes.
if your first impression, this goes back to the honesty thing. Like, you want them to hire you because you yourself are a good fit, not because the character you played is a good fit. So, for these
Mhm.
behavioral interviews, like for me, I like to smile, I like to joke, and I like to ask questions. So that's what I do. But and sometimes that's just not what somebody wants, right? Sometimes the interview wants someone who will sit down, shut up, and do their work.
Yeah.
And which is another very valuable type that I just have 0 capacity to emulate.
Mhm.
But, so if you're someone, like, you're quieter, you just work, you can put on you don't have to put on a persona that maybe websites tell you to, in
Yeah.
my opinion, having, been hired for, like, 4 jobs and one of them being a real company, but
Right.
or
But
but
let's say you have your strengths aren't really like you're not a good worker, you're lazy, you're never on time. What would you do then? Because you can't lie,
well,
but you still
what
want
you
the
wanna do
job or need the
what
job.
you wanna do first is fix your habits, right? Because if you're lazy, never go to work on time, and never get your work done, and you're hired, you're gonna have that job for a short period of time because you're lazy, you never get your work done on time, and you're a bad worker, right? So, you shouldn't be you shouldn't be interviewing in a certain way because that's the right thing to do. You should interview in the way you are because you're the right person for the job, and if you're
Yeah.
not the right person for the job, then don't waste everyone's time, including yours.
Right. I mean, that's a really good point, and it's an obvious one too, but
Yeah,
I think we do
I
need
found
to.
myself thinking about that in college apps, like, when people, like, every time it's, like, someone's saying about if you're to exaggerate or something, like, exaggerate your accomplishments, exaggerate your being in something, and then
Mhm.
it's just, so let's say actually, college apps might be a bad example because it's a black box using voodoo beyond this earth,
Yeah.
but, um, I guess for me, it's like, if someone who if an exaggerated version of myself makes it into this school I wanna go to, and I choose to go, it's not gonna feel good because I'll have gotten in based off someone who isn't me, so maybe I won't actually be right for
Yeah.
that school.
And, just thinking back to what you said about how, like, if you're lazy and never on time, like, you just need to work on yourself. I feel like a big self-improvement message to this video is if you feel the need to lie, like, forget the whole honesty thing real quick. Just think about it simply like this. If you feel like you need to lie to land a good first impression, you're probably not fit.
Yeah, I mean, clearly you want yourself to be something else. So before you start projecting that image to other people, maybe fix those specific things about you.
Yeah.
Which sounds rough, and I'm sure there's probably nuances that I'm missing out on by
Mhm.
making this broad sweeping statement. So
Yeah, we're not experts.
maybe yeah. But that just it seems like yeah, you shouldn't have to it's gonna be a bad choice in the long run to put on a persona.
Mhm. Like, if you're trying to be like how you said, if you wanna be something and you want an ideal job or position or just, like, to be a good friend, like, maybe that can be just your first mental check that before you lie about it or put on an act, you just have to take some introspection and think about it, like, "Who do I wanna be? How do I wanna act?" and then you
Yeah.
can start applying it, and maybe you can maybe you can tell them the same thing that you were going to tell them, but now it's not a lie, you know?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it gets into, like, a messy situation if you're trying to play catch up with the right version of yourself because of
Yeah.
someone's inaccurate model of you, but
Mhm. And it's kinda like living up to expectations too and everything.
yeah, that sounds like an episode of Culmination.
Ugh. Yes. So, yeah, I guess with that said, we can start ending things off here, but, do you have any final thoughts?
Um, no, mostly just, like I think impressions should be fun. For me, impressions are fun because I like talking and I like being talked to.
Mhm.
So it shouldn't. My last thing for me is like it's for me. I always like coming out with it like laughing
Yeah.
because that just means that I'm happier and maybe I made a new friend or maybe I horribly messed up a conversation. It's hilarious now.
Yeah, and there's different methods too, so just to make this more broad for the listener, but whatever works for you, whatever presents yourself in the best way that you wanna be represented, just really everything. But I really like that you said that, like, it should be fun, you know?
Yeah,
We never really think about this as fun, it's more so scary, but I don't know, at the end of the day, there's some really interesting people out there, and
yeah,
they
definitely.
deserve to
I
know who we
also
are.
hell yeah, yeah. That's a good way of putting it. They deserve to know who I am because I am me. Wow, it sounds like a Dr. Seuss book.
Cogito ergo sum.
Yeah.
I think therefore I am. Even though that's kind of different, but you get the gist.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
anyway, Rohan, thank you so much for coming on here, man.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to talk about this. It was definitely fun. Definitely a nice way to enter the city with that was
Oh, that was
that
it.
yeah, I don't know.
Oh, I thought you were saying more. I was like,
I was, but then I realized there was context that no one had, so we're gonna scratch that. Scratch that from the record.
well, yeah, maybe not the best first impression.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll you win some, you lose some.
You win some, you lose some. But anyway, thanks everybody for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. See ya.